let's focus on the story of Marquise. Marquise, Jacques. These are the words from the Tale of Two Cities. The Tale of Two Cities. These are words the narration. It goes like this. Chapter 5. The Tale of Two Cities. Okay? The Tale of Two Cities. The Tale of Two Cities. The Marquise, chapter 5. The Marquise was one of the powerful lords of the royal court. He was a man above 50 who lived in great luxury, notwithstanding the penury of his people. He was very fond of elegant dresses and was always powdering and sticking his hair. His fingers were always laden with precious rings and trinkets. He was always busy enjoying operas and hunts. The state of his populace concerned the state of his populace concerned him as much as trifles concerning men in power and luxury. One fine morning, he set out in his coach for some place. The coach dashed through the streets with wild rattle and clatter. Women screamed and pulled out their children from the way. At a corner near a fountain, its wheels came to a sickening jolt. There was a loud cry from a number of voices, and the horses reared and plunged. Sensing that some people had stopped the carriage, the Marquis calmly looked out and said, "What has gone wrong?" What has gone wrong? A tall man had caught up a bundle from among the feet of horses and laid it down by the fountain. He was down in the mud, howling over it like a wild animal. "Pardon, Monsieur the Marquis," said a ragged and timid man. "It is a child." "It is a child. What is he crying like that for? Is it his child?" "Excuse me, Monsieur the Marquis, it is a PTS." The tall man suddenly got up and came running towards the carriage. The Marquis clamped his hand for an instant on his sword. Killed? Killed? Shrieked the man in despair. Dead? The people had collected around the carriage and watched eagerly. There was no anger in them. The Marquis ran his eyes over all of them, as if they were mere rats come out of their holes. He took He took out his purse. "I can't see," said he, "why you people cannot take care of your children. One or the other of you is forever coming in my way. How do I know what injury you have done to my horses? See, give him that." He threw out a gold coin at the tall man. The tall man again looked at it and then whispered, "Dead." He was stopped by the arrival of another man for whom the rest made the way. On seeing him, he fell upon his shoulder, crying and sobbing. He pointed to the fountain, where some women were stooping silently over the motionless bundle. "I know all," said the newcomer. Have heart, my Gaspard. It is better for the people. It is better for the poor thing to die. It has died in a moment without pain. Could it have lived an hour as happily? "You are a wise fellow," said the Marquis, smiling. "What do they call you?" "They call me Defarge." "What is your trade?" "I sell wine." "Pick up that vendor of wine," said Marquis, throwing another gold coin, "and spend it as you will." "The horses there, are they all right?" The Marquis leaned back in his seat with the air of a gentleman who had accidentally broken some common thing and could afford to pay for it. But his ease was suddenly disturbed when a gold coin flung into the carriage hit the floor. "Hold the horses," said the Marquis. "Who threw that?" He looked at the spot where the wine cellar had stood, but he was no longer there. A woman stood there, dark and stout, knitting. "Your dogs," said the Marquis, smoothly. "I would slide over any of you willingly, if I knew who threw that." "I would slide over any of you willingly, if I knew who threw that." "Who threw that? He would be crushed under my carriage." Not a voice, nor even an eye was raised. Every man knew the Marquis could and would do that within the law and beyond it, should he so wished. But the woman who stood knitting looked at him steadily. It was beneath his dignity to notice it. His eyes passed over her and all over, in scorn, and leaning back again in his seat, he gave the word, "Gone! Gone!" It was evening as the carriage moved on. The Marquis sat still, looking outside the landscape of the village. He was coming to his chateau in the country. The village had its one poor street with its the village had its one poor street with its poor brewery, poor tannery, poor tavern, poor stable yard, and a poor fountain. It had its poor people too. It was not difficult to understand what made them poor. They had to pay a tax to the state, a tax to the church, a tax to the noble, and so many other taxes that at last they were left with no money for themselves. When the carriage stopped at the village fountain, people gathered around it, and then Marquis, surveying eyes, caught one fellow, and he ordered him to be brought before him. "Why did you stare at my carriage when on the way?" "Monsieur, I looked at the man." He stooped a little and then pointed his tattered blue cap under the carriage. He swung by the chain to drag that man, replied the old man. Swung by the chain to be killed. Monsieur, I myself wondered why he would do this. Who was he? Tell me. You know all the men in this part of the country, demanded the Marquis. He was not of this part, monsieur. He was a stranger. I had not seen him before. What was he like, monsieur? He was whiter than the miller and tall, all covered with dust. He looked aghast. Truly you did well, said the Marquis, to see a man hiding inside my carriage and not open the great mouth of yours. Put him aside, Monsieur Gabelle. Monsieur Gabelle was the postmaster as well as the tax officer, and had come to assist in the questioning of the old villager. Lay hands on the stranger if he comes to the village tonight, and be sure to know what business he is up to. Gabelle. Monsieur, I shall faithfully follow any of your orders. And thus the Marquis set again on this journey, and soon reached his chateau. As he alighted, a whole bevy of servants came running to him. Monsieur Charles, my nephew, he asked, has he arrived from London yet? No, monsieur. He will not arrive tonight, then. I shall have my supper alone. Go. After an hour, when the Marquis sat dining, he noticed something against the window. What is that? Open the window. The servant hurriedly opened the window, but could not detect anything. It was pitch dark outside. It's nothing, monsieur. Good, said the master. Close them. He went back to his supper, but was distracted after a while by the sound of wheels approaching. His nephew Charles Evemonde had arrived in England. He was known as Charles Darnay. Daniel Darnay. The Marquis, receiving him, said, You took a long time coming. Yes, I have been detained by many businesses, said Charles. It carried me into great difficulties, almost into death, brink of death, and I doubt you would have cared to stop me there. I could have done that for the honor of the family, replied the Marquis coldly. And if it were in your powers, you would have had me imprisoned long before. It is possible, replied Marquis calmly, for the honor of the family. I would even do that. We have so disgraced our past and present, replied Charles gloomily, that our name would be among the most detested in the coming time. Let us hope so, replied the Marquis, for it is the way of the law to show respect to the high ones. For it is the way of the law to show respect to the high ones. It is not, replied Darnay. The people show us respect out of fear. What else can a slave do? The slave must fear the master. Then if the things are to stand in order. No, sir, we have done wrong. History will say. We are guilty to our people. We injured every human who came between us and our pleasure. I detest this kind of life. I come home only to carry the last wish of my dying mother, who asked me to show mercy and redress the wrongs done to people. Then no, my nephew, said the Marquis, touching his breast with his forefinger, you will never get any help from me. I see you are a loser, Charles. You are lost, Charles. This property and France are lost to me. Came the decided voice of the young man. If it was passed to me some day, I will put it in those hands who will slowly return it to the pleasance, to whom it really belonged. In England, you mean? Yes, where I shall live under another name. Yes. Have you come to know another Frenchman who has found refuge there? A doctor and his daughter? Yes, I surmise you are in a good company then, said the Marquis sarcastically. You must be tired. Good night. As he bowed his head in the most casual manner, there was an evil secrecy in his smiling face, which struck his nephew, but he failed to decipher the exact meaning of it. After he had left, the old Marquis paced the room, muttering to himself, a doctor and his daughter, a new philosophy, well, and he reclined on bed with a curse for his nephew. The night was cold and quiet. Everything of the world slept, not knowing what the next day was to bring. As the dawn broke, villagers started getting about their work. The chateau rose late, as was the custom. Doors and windows were thrown open to let in the morning sunshine. Doors and windows were thrown open, burst open, left open to let in the morning shine. Hope. Everything looked all right except that the bell was being rung loudly, and the servants had started running up and down the stairs. Soon the horses were saddled, prepared, put up, ranged. Some of them were seen riding away. The Monsieur of Marquis was found lying dead on his bed. His face looked like a fine mask fixed into an expression of utter astonishment. Driven deep into his heart was a knife. Round its heart was a piece of paper on which was scrawled, "Drive him fast to his grave." This from Jacques. Thank you. This is the reading of chapter 5, Marquis.